Thanks for joining me today. So we're going to talk about it's okay to be green. And I have to admit that growing up, the connotation of green had some different meanings. If you had a green thumb, kind of meant you were good in the garden or growing plants, whatever it might be. Uh, there was always, if you were feeling a little green, probably you had a hangover. Um, And then there was also the thing if you were a little green behind the ears, it meant that you didn't necessarily know a whole lot about things. And so I'm going to try to show you a little bit more about what I feel about going green is so that you won't be green behind the ears with that. So anyway, we're going to talk about why going with solar. We'll do the pros and cons of it. We'll talk about budget friendly, which I refer to as plug and play. We'll talk about a complete solar power system and what's involved with the placement and power and performance. So why do we want to go green? Well, for starters, think about this. The sun is nothing more than a huge power plant out there, actually producing to the rate of about 384 septillion tons, I'm sorry, 384 septillion watts a second. And I'm familiar with million, billion, trillion. Uh, think about a septillion as one with 24 zeros behind it. So in other words, big numbers. To put it in a little different perspective, the sun produces about 650,000 times the amount of energy that the earth uses in an entire year. And it's doing that in 1 second. So we need to harness that sucker and put it to work for us. So what's involved with going solar power and why? Some of the key advantages. Um, the Obviously we harness the sun's energy. It reduces our electrical consumption and the reliance on fossil fuel. And we certainly all know what fossil fuel is doing these days. We've seen it in our utility bills. We've seen it at the gas pump. So great energy efficiency with using solar power. Cost savings as far as that goes, once it's installed, there is really minimal operating cost because you're not tied to the electrical grid, and that leads to long financial gains. For the most part, there's pretty low maintenance on it. We're all familiar with LED lights. They're relatively maintenance free. And our solar panels are, they have a life expectancy of anywhere from 25 to 30-year lifespan. So again, the biggie there is that we're independent from the power grid. And another way to look at it is, guess what? When the power is out, your sign is the only one that's lit. So the so ease of installation, since there's no wiring to the power grid, the big thing here is that you don't need a licensed electrician to do this. Um, Versatility, there's solar lights come in all various sizes, shapes, and forms. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. Sustainability, again, as I mentioned, it's a clean power, and um, I don't think we're gonna deplete the sun's energy anytime in our lifetime for sure. The There's solar tax credits involved, and unfortunately, the big federal one went away at the end of 2025, and that was a 30% tax credit, which was nice because that could be taken right off the top. But check at your local and state levels. Utility companies might offer rebates, and so there's incentives for doing that. So again, it's okay to be green. You're a good corporate citizen. You're using energy efficient products. It lowers our carbon footprint. Um, and that's something I guess it's always puzzled me a little bit. What do they mean by a carbon footprint? Well, look at it this way. Carbon footprint is the emissions that an activity releases, whether it's an engine running, if it's a manufacturing facility, and all of those gases are being released into the atmosphere. And lowering our carbon footprint typically a solar power plant, a good one will eliminate about 3 to 4 tons of carbon emissions. Um, and that would be the equivalent of cleaning the air for like 400 people. So let's embrace a brighter and greener future, one panel at a time. So pros and cons on it. Obviously, good, bad, and the ugly, I guess. Cons, yeah, it could be it can be a initial high investment. Uh, Obviously, they're dependent on the sun and weather, so we need to take that into consideration. There's energy storage limitations, and we'll talk about that. That's all kind of based around your battery size, battery compartments. Um, there are some maintenance requirements, and I guess I would look at that and say that's probably more so in your northern latitudes in the fall. Rain, the dropping of the leaves off the trees, snow, they get on your solar panels, and your solar panels might have to be cleaned occasionally. And Unfortunately, there are some vandalism concerns, mainly from the battery standpoint. It seems like they like to target battery compartments, so we'll talk about that and uh, what we do to try to minimize that as much as we can. But it's kind of one of those things. If they're bound and determined, they'll get in there one way or the other one. Um, Space requirements, we need to take a look also at where our solar array is going to go and do we have the size for it? In some cases, maybe the solar panels go on top of the sign. In other cases, we can put them up on a pole, depending on what the size of the footprint is of the sign. So um, some of the things there, and then we're limited on our output power again, depending on the battery. So we'll talk a little bit about how we go about looking at that. So from the pro standpoint, cost effectiveness, yes, it might be a high initial investment, but over the span of 25 to 30 years, it's going to pay for itself 8 to 10 times over. Um, and again, I mentioned the fossil fuels, the fluctuation that goes on with that. Like I say, we see that at the gas pump, we see it in our utility bills. So you're using sustainable energy, as I mentioned, 384 septillion watts per second. Um, and so again, you are energy dependent, uh, or I'm sorry, energy independent, going with solar. So let's talk about the greenbacks, what's cost and so forth. And the first one we're going to talk about is our budget-friendly options. And you'll hear me refer to these as our plug and play. Um, there are solar signs come in all different sizes, shapes, and forms. We do have street lights, uh, various options, various things on that. The big thing with this type of budget-friendly fixtures, the uh, the battery is contained within the fixture housing. Solar panels on street lights typically are on the back side of the street light, or on other signs, other types, which we'll talk about. The solar panels obviously come with them. I mentioned all sizes, shapes, and forms. Uh, Flagpole lighting, both from downlighting or uplighting. We offer bollards, various types of street lights, canopy lighting, and even portable solar construction lights. But let's talk about what our interest is, and that's more so into signage. So we offer a unit called the Sunrise. It's same thing. Solar panels and is integrated into it. The battery is housed within the system, and it is a single unit. They have an adaptive lighting controls on them. It starts out at dusk or at dark at 100% brightness for the first 4 hours, and then it goes to 25% after that for the remainder of the night. You will not have photocells or time clocks on these because your solar panel is basically your photocell. When it gets dark, it turns the fixture on, and when the sun comes up, it turns the fixture off and goes back into charging mode. This particular sunrise unit has an adjustable degree for the tilt on it, which we'll talk about how you go about figuring out what degree your solar panel should be adjusted to. And then the stand on it is adjustable up to 15 to 24 inches. It's a great light for one of those monument signs, a directional sign, whatever, that might be way out at the end of uh, a driveway where it's tough to get power to or whatever. Um, Talk a little bit about a project that we did on the Arizona-California border over on the Colorado River. Um, These were billboards. They were a back-to-back, a V-board, and the um, same thing with the lighting here. They on at 100% for 4 hours, and then the remaining 4 hours they went to 50%, and if it was still dark after 8 hours, then they went to a 30%. But I will mention that there is a separate remote control that you can purchase there to where you can actually change your lighting schedule. And when I say your lighting schedule, I'm referring more so to the adaptive lighting. In other words, maybe we want it on at 100% for 5 hours, and then we maybe drop it down to 30%, and we bring it up again in the morning, say maybe at 4 o'clock, so that we catch those people that are on their way to work, whatever. But again, that is something separate. They all come adjusted with their set timing on them when it comes from the factory. But like I say, with a separate remote control, we can make those changes. So let's talk a little bit about this particular application. I mentioned the solar panels. In this case, the solar panels were mounted to the top of the sign. Um, I did this with 250-watt solar fixtures, one on each face or two on each face, again back to back. So there's four um, per V board on this. And as I mentioned, the batteries are contained within the fixture itself. And the in this particular uh, fixture, the solar panel comes with it, with all of the mounting hardware. They're simple watertight connections that are color coded, so they're virtually impossible to hook up wrong. Famous last words. But and so to give you an idea on cost, we did these two boards, four fixtures, the solar panels, um, and this was at the sign shop cost. We did the two faces for 4150. And in comparison, um, the a true solar panel or solar power system for one board, one face, one fixture, uh, was roughly about 9,000. But let me explain the difference between the two here. So I mentioned that the batteries are contained within the housing on this alpha fixture. So that's a relatively small battery, and our reserve time is probably around 2 to 3 days. So if you hit a week of cloudy weather, there's a very good possibility these boards are going to go dark, and they won't charge back up again until the sun comes out, charges the battery, and then they will illuminate again. With the true solar power system, basically at twice the cost for one face, we did have a 7-day reserve on that. And that all centers around the battery compartment and the number of batteries that we're able to put in that. I mean, you can appreciate the fact that the size of the fixture, and if we're putting a battery in size there, there's not a whole lot of battery storage within that fixture housing, in comparison to if we put a large stainless steel compartment at the bottom of a sign or somehow up within the sign. So one of the big things there, you give up some for the budget-friendly plug and play. You're giving up some reserve time on that. Again, different signage here for our spark. You can see that the solar panel is included on the housing itself. Again, the battery is located in there. It's a simple clamp type thing for an over-the-top mounting. And The again, the adjustable adaptive lighting on it, and it with the remote control, you could adjust that and change that timing a little bit there. The Spark Pro, which is a takeoff on what we just looked at, but this is a nice brushed aluminum fixture. Solar panels on top. The batteries are contained within it. There is an LCD screen on the side of this that lets you know what your power consumption is. If you need to look at that, uh, it's a great top mounting fixture with the 90 degrees lens on it. It eliminates any glare for driver or pedestrian. And they start at a 2 foot long panel, and they go all the way up to 6 feet. Um, the Sunrise Pro, basically the same thing again. It's a little larger solar panel with it. The battery, you can see where the battery compartment is housed here. The unique thing with this one is that within this, it has its own heating element for the battery. And that has a tendency to lend itself well into the colder climates. I think for any of you that are from the colder climates, the Midwest, the East Coast, especially with the deep freeze that you guys have been getting hit with here the past couple of weeks, um, I'm sure you know what those frigid temperatures do to your car battery, and your car won't start. So in this case, um, the heating compartment for this battery helps it to do better than that. We did a project in northern Minnesota about 5 or 6 years ago, um, for an open pit mine up in Hibbing, and it was a custom application. We basically took a street light, built our battery components or compartment with it, and they put it on basically like a skid that could be moved around within the open pit mine with a forklift. But the one big adjustment that we had to do with this, we had to get special batteries, insulated the battery compartment extremely well because the batteries had to be good to 50 below. So we can customize different things depending on what the environment might be. Something our most recent addition to our solar offering is the sun sign. And you'll hear me say this numerous times, mainly because I've been in lighting for so long. But if your sign's not lit, it's only working part-time. If you can't see your sign 24 hours a day, um, yeah, it's only working part-time. So in this case, the solar panels are at the bottom. Battery compartment is in the bottom of the unit. This weighs roughly about 50 pounds, with that 50 pounds basically being all encompassed in that bottom housing. So it's fairly sturdy within winds. High powered, higher winds, whatever. We do have some snap-on leg extenders that make the footprint a little bit larger, so it makes it a little more stable and not as easy to tip over in wind. There are wheels that come with it that you can attach to it. So if you're wheeling it in and out, back and forth from, say, a retail outlet, moving it out to the curb or the boulevard, whatever, and wheel it back in when the shop closes down, there is that. The This is something great for your concert venues, casinos, for directing them towards a casino out in the parking lot. Um, Concert halls, just parking at hotels, whatever. And same thing, this will, because of this battery compartment size, um, it will hold the charge for probably 2 to 3 days. Um, and then once again, if you have a long overcast, cloudy days, it's not going to charge back up uh, until the sun comes back out. There is AC adapter for this, so you can do it from that standpoint. So, and again, that's available through Glantz. We have inventory on this, so feel free to reach out if you have some interest from this standpoint. All right, so let's talk about a true solar power system. And the difference kind of explained to you already part of that, but let's take a look at what's involved with a true solar system. Um, so when does it make sense? I look at it and say, I would like to see that we can pay for itself within 3 years. Now, on a revenue generating sign, that makes a big difference. And here I'm talking about the billboard industry. I think you all probably know that advertising on a billboard will start anywhere from around $500 a month, depending on location and the size. And I know of some sites that go up to as high as five figures for that monthly uh, rent of that billboard. So at a rule of thumb, like I say, I'd like to look at 36 months or a 3-year payback. So let's consider that for a standard 1448 billboard with four lights on it, the typical solar power system for that would run about $15,000. And I'm going to use that there's a state tax credit of 10%, so that $15,000 drops us down to 13,500. If I amortize that out over 36 months, I come up at $375. So in reality, I need $375 a month to pay for that in 3 years. And again, at some of your lower cost revenues at $500 a month rent on a billboard, it's certainly gonna pay for itself. And over the life of the solar system, it'll probably pay for itself 8 to 10 times over. On a non-revenue generating sign, that's a little bit different. There we have to look at it, I guess, and say, what's it going to cost to run power out to that sign? If you have to go across the parking lot, you've got the cutting through the asphalt, you're going to have the repair of that. And again, depending on how long the run is, I've heard horror stories anywhere from 50,000. I know I had one incident to where they had to go across the freeway, and it was a pretty long run. I heard that one was 150,000. So depending where your sign is at and how far the run might be to run electricity to it, solar can make some great sense on that and be very cost effective. The other thing we need to look at is exposure of nighttime illumination. It produces more foot traffic, obviously, and it certainly makes the people more aware of your business and what you're advertising. And a solar sign makes a pretty big statement. It lets the consumer out there realize that you're concerned about the environment and uh, trying to preserve it as best that we can. So let's look at some other numbers. Let's take 100. Let's take a sign that's using 100 watts of whether it be modules or sticks, whatever. The majority of all solar powered systems run at 12 volts. If you remember the old formula of amp equals watts divided by volts. So if we've got 100 watt divided by 12 volts, that's 8.3 amps that you need to power that. But now again, batteries are not rated in amps, they're rated in amp hours. So the formula that we want to use for that is we'll take our amp hours, divide by our current, and then get our runtime hours. So if we need 100 amp hours at 8.33, divide by 8.33, we're getting 12 hours of runtime just with that battery. Now, we need to be able to charge that back. The other thing is that you need to look at real world adjustments, anywhere from 20 to 30% on that because of inverter loss, battery inefficiency, and so forth. And we'll take a look at that. I'll show that to you here in just a bit. So this is a map of the sunniest states in the Union. Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, they get dinged. Alaska, obviously, because they're dark about 6 months out of the year. And the Pacific Northwest, they get a lot of overcast and a lot of rain up there. I spent a fair amount of time, about just south of Seattle in a little place called Fort Lewis, and I swore that I was going to have to use WD-40 to keep myself from rusting because it was overcast and cloudy and rainy so much of the time. So when I when we design a solar system, solar power system, I like to design to winter peak hours. And winter peak hours, they take a look at it a little bit differently because, as you know, the sun's at a different angle, shorter time. And so uh, I'm going to show you an example of a couple of things. I want to point out one thing to you. If you look up here, I'm going to compare um, a, uh, a project that we did in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Sun hours are 1.5, winter sun hours. I'm going to compare it, that same sign, if it was done in Phoenix, Arizona, uh, at uh, at 4.5 sun hours. So here's what happens on that. The Depending on what latitude the sign is going to be, uh, we design it to the peak sun hours. Peak sun hours are calculated with the intensity of sunlight when it averages 1,000 watts per square meter. And again, um, this is a rough estimate. There's things that'll, shading, uh, losses due to the battery, other things. So we'll kind of look at that, and I'll explain why we design to sun hours. So I mentioned Green Bay, Wisconsin. 54% of their days are sunny. Um, that means 196 days, but only 89 are truly a clear sun day. So your average sun hours during the summer is 3.9 or 4 sun hours. If I design to my winter peak hours, which I pointed out to you was 1.5, if I have a 4 kilowatt solar array, that 1.5 times that 4, I will charge those to 6 kilowatts per day. If I take that same application and look at it in Phoenix, you see the days there. Average sun hours through the summer are 5.7, but my winter sun hours are 4. So if I design to my winter sun hours, that same system, 4 sun hours uh, times the 4 kilowatts, I'll get 16 kilowatts per day. So you can see the difference if in placement, if I'm in a northern latitude versus in a southern latitude. And doesn't mean that we can't make them work in the frozen chosen north, but the there is a difference. The other thing, if you notice, if I design using winter peak hours, I'm automatically giving myself close to a 2 to 3 to 1 safety factor, um, just with the difference in designing to winter sun hours versus summer. So just another, like I say, safety factor that we put into it. Um, so then the other thing we need to take a look at is where are the solar panels going? What kind of sun exposure does it get? Where is it going to pick up the most sunlight per day? And then we need to consider that too, as well as the sun angle for winter. We need to look at our space. Mentioned that a little earlier. Is the footprint going to be big enough to handle that solar array? If not, we can go on poles, or it can go on top of a sign. I'll show you some. You saw what we did with that one billboard. There's some other applications where we can do solar panels on top of the roof or whatever it might be. You need to check with permits and what that might be. They vary from state to state or local level. And again, solar panels need to be south facing. And I mentioned angle of that solar panel. Just a rule of thumb, like to take a look at the latitude of where it's going, and then take 15% of that, add that to it. So say, for example, Louisville is at 38 degrees latitude. 15% of that is 5.7. Put those two together, and my angle, the best angle degree for a solar panel in Louisville would be 44 or 45 degree at that. Um, and again, we want to keep them out of the shade. They don't like that. Sun is our friend. We need that sunlight on it. So the first initial thing with a complete solar power plant, obviously, is the solar panels. And as I mentioned, they have a expectancy of 25 to 30 years. Yeah, there might be some maintenance that's involved with them from time to time. And again, I look at that more so as rainy weather, fall with the falling leaves and so forth. If they get stuck to it, you might have to get out there uh, brush them off, clean them off. The other thing about solar panels, they're classified as tier one, two, and three. And as you can see, basically your tier one is a manufacturer that's been in business for more than 5 years and are well established in the industry. As you go down tier two, tier three, the less warranty on them, faster degradation. And again, I guess I will just state you get what you pay for. And if you're going with a solar system, do it right so that your customer is going to be happy. And we'll design it to, as I mentioned, a safety factor to get a 2 to 3 plus safety factor in there, and using all excellent components in your system. Next thing is the batteries. We've talked about those and how we go about looking at those. The uh, there's various types of batteries. We predominantly use the lead acid AGM battery. It can be turned on its side, um, and sometimes in a battery compartment you might have to do that. Life expectancy on these varies from 5 to 15 years, and pretty good indication uh, of the quality of the battery that you're getting will be the warranty that you're going to get with it. So let's take a look at that other example, excuse me, that we were talking about with a 100-watt system at 12 volts. Remember, we had 8.3 uh, amps that we needed. And so if we take that 8.3 and I want to run that 7 hours a night, that gives me 58 amps that I need. And if I'm going with a 5 night or a five day reserve, I'll take that 58 times 5. And so I need a battery backup that's going to be the equivalent of 290 amp hours. It's a little bit more involved with that, but a little bit that kind of gives you a rough idea of what we look at from there. Um, and a good indication that you're going to see on if you think your batteries need to be replaced or whatever, you'll notice a big difference in their charging time, that it's going to take longer for them to charge. Your burn cycle just isn't what it used to be. Instead of maybe a 7 hour burn cycle, maybe they're going dim after 5 hours, whatever. So there are pretty good indications on that. I mentioned vandalism, and batteries seem to be the ones that they like to target the most. Uh, we use a complete stainless steel compartment with uh, tamper-proof bolts. Our life expectancy on it is going to vary anywhere from 8 to 15 years, and that kind of depends again on if you have some battery conditions to where maybe they do leak, acid gets in there, eats away at it. The environment can cause some issues with it, whatever. Uh, and again, I'll go back um, to vandals. If they get in there with a cutting torch, yeah, they're probably going to break into it. So um, the other components to our system is we use an inverter only when we're using AC components. If we've got DC, we don't necessarily worry about that. um, our controllers, excuse me. Controllers handle the load function, and that will vary with what kind of a lighting so burn cycle we have on it. And then with some systems, and this is we can offer an additional item that is called a smart link, and it's a remote monitoring system. And that can be at your customer's site, and they can look at that and they can monitor it. They can tell whether the batteries are working. They can tell whether the lights are on. Um, you can watch if you've got, it'll let you know if you've got a light out on the system. And where this comes in handy is typically a solar powered sign is probably going to be out in the middle of nowhere. And so when the maintenance guy goes out there with a smart link, hopefully he's got everything on the truck that he absolutely needs. Um, Again, on big billboard companies, they typically will have smart links on their billboards, and it's all monitored at one headquarter site. And so they can go through and flip through. A lot of times they'll have anywhere from 8 to 10 screens of each sign that they have on it, and they can flip through and actually see what that sign is doing, so they know when they have to go out for maintenance what all they need. So for a complete system, I've mentioned that we can do various things with the solar panels. You note here that a billboard up in Vegas, we've got the solar panels mounted on top. Um, just to the right of that, you can see that we have a ground mount on those solar panels, but our battery compartment and our controllers are snuck underneath them. Again, stainless steel housings, and we've tried to put them in a place to where it's just not convenient for a vandal to try to get to. Uh, to the right of that, we've got a bus stop, bus shelter. The solar panels are all on the top of the roof on that one. And that powers the sign not only to illuminate the waiting area, but both of those sideboards, side advertising, some LED modules in there to illuminate those as well. The I mentioned that we can hide the solar panels. This is an application on a billboard, a V-board, where the solar panels went in between, and the controllers obviously were mounted up in between as well. You get these things that are up off the ground, and obviously they're a little bit more vandal resistant, I guess, than some of our solar panels and the battery compartments that might be at ground level. So a lot of different configurations depending on what you've got, we can design to it. So what do I need to do for a complete system? Well, I need to know what you're trying to light with the solar. Is it a sign? Are you lighting something else? I need to know the size of it. And I need to know if it's going to be internal or external illumination. I can tell you that if it's external illumination, if we can do it with the budget-friendly plug and play, I will probably try and go that route only because it is less expensive. But again, when we talk about revenue generating and whatever, if it's a larger sign and it takes quite a bit more lights to illuminate it, whatever, we're not going to be able to do that decently enough to where we're going to have to add a battery compartment and components to it. So I also need to know where this is located. Basically, city and zip code will be enough for me. That tells me the latitude that you're at. So that's basically it. I'm here to help. Feel free to reach out to me. That QR code has all of my contact information on it. And if I can be of any help, happy to do it. Again, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for solar, and Glantz is one of the true leaders in that in our industry. So please feel free to reach out to us. Peggy, I'll turn it over to you.
Man, I think you have really covered it. So
I
sounds
appreciate
like it
that.
gives some people things to think about. And, certainly if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to us at Glantz. We can help you and any kind of solar questions you have. And somebody said hi and thanks from Chico, California, I would assume.
Oh, okay. Familiar with that? Yes.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. And we'll have a replay, probably post it tomorrow in case anybody missed it, because sometimes people have to go back to work and you know how that goes. But thank you all so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Peggy, thank you so much, and everybody in marketing on it.
Oh, we got you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
all right. Thanks, everybody.